Hello, welcome to the self-learning platform by Dr. Sushma Singh. Today we start Unit 4, Decision Making Institutions. And our topic is Prime Minister's Office. It is well known that parliamentary government became cabinet government and gradually after the Second World War. It has increasingly become prime ministerial government. Since then, PM has become very important in all the decision making processes. Thus, Prime Minister's Office PMO plays a major role in policy formulation, including foreign policy decision making. However powerful a PM is, he cannot decide every issue relating to foreign policy. Only such issues which RPM thinks is important for India's security, foreign policy goals, or economic development, or that is vital to parties standing in the country, and his own power and prestige would be decided in the PM's office. Lal Bahadur Shastri had set up the Prime Minister's Secretariat, which later became the PMO in 1964. When he became the PM, he was not very well acquainted with foreign affairs. He also appointed a full time external affairs minister for the first time. Nehru had retained MEA with himself, and therefore it was natural for him to handle foreign policy through his own office. Shastri used the talents of a senior civil servant L.K. Jha to handle the foreign policy. This trend of PMO playing a major role became evident only during the tenure of Indira Gandhi. She held MEA with her for a while, 1967 to 1970. But later he appointed separate ministers for external affairs. Her power was at pinnacle during the Bangladesh War in 1971 with Pakistan. She had in her office trusted aides like P.N. Haksar and D.P. Dhar. It was she who conducted talks on the Bangladesh crisis with foreign powers, decided the details of war, and also held delicate negotiations in Shimla after the war ended in the defeat of Pakistan and signed the Shimla Agreement in 1972. The PMO includes a large number of joint secretaries, deputy secretaries, OSDs, and other officials, each dealing with different aspects of prime ministerial functioning. In the present NDA government, PMO is gradually becoming powerful in the policy making. Normally, PM National Security Advisor does not get involved in the public presentation of India's foreign policy. That is the task of the PM or the Minister of External Affairs or Foreign Secretary. But for the first time, Prime Minister's Principal Secretary Brijesh Mishra not only discussed a wide range of foreign policy issues but also made public policy pronouncements on several occasions. He had hinted at important foreign policy decisions on visits to other countries. Thus, while addressing a gathering of American Jews in Washington in May 2003, he said that India, US, and Israel should make a joint effort to fight the menace of terrorism. This also provoked media reaction that National Security Advisor is overshadowing the Minister of External Affairs. Now, the next topic is Parliament. If the above is the brief description of foreign policy decision making within the executive branch, what is the role of Parliament? Does the Parliament play a role in decision making on foreign policy? Parliament is a representative body of the people. Thus, the ultimate control over the government policy making, including foreign policy, rests with the Parliament. On several foreign policy related issues, as listed in the Union list, the Parliament has exclusive power to enact legislation. For instance, these include diplomatic, consular, and trade representation, war and peace, the United Nations, citizenship, naturalization, etc. The Parliament has the power to approve treaties, but it is the Union government which determines the basic contents of the treaties and seeks the final approval of the Parliament. Thus, in the case of the Indo Soviet Peace and Friendship Treaty, Indira Gandhi, then Prime Minister, informed the Parliament 1 hour before it was to be signed on August 9, 1971. Politically, it depends upon the majority support commanded by a PM. By and large, during her term, no one dared to question her decisions. During Nehru's time, Aphrodite in Domestic Roots of India's Foreign Policy discusses in detail how Parliament was able to exercise its influence over India's China policy. It was under the pressure of the Parliament and the President that Nehru was forced to relieve Krishnan Menon of his defense portfolio. Second instance that reflected Parliament's influence is the issue of government taking high-powered transmitters from Voice of America (VOA) for All India Radio in March 1963 to meet the Chinese propaganda after the October 1962 border war. The agreement had a clause to share time with the VOA. The Communist MPs were vehemently against this, as they were concerned more with their anti-Americanism than protecting Indian national interest. The government ultimately dropped the whole project. In these examples, it is possible to argue that Parliament was able to assert only after a policy decision is taken. Second, it succeeded in getting rid of Manon only because of the failure of India in the 1962 Sino Indian War. In normal times, it is difficult for a parliament to assert such powers. In a coalition government that we are familiar with since 1996, it is prudent for the PM to take people's representatives into confidence. During the Gulf War II, by the US led alliances against Iraq in March 2003, the NDA government was keen to pursue what Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee called middle path of not offending the US by not taking any hard line against the war, but at the same time asking Iraq to fully cooperate with the UN in destroying the weapons of mass destruction. However, the parliament insisted on the resolution condemning, deploring American military intervention in Iraq. Ultimately, it took recourse to Hindi language by using Ninda as a substitute for stronger English word condemned. But this is not the first instance of the coalition government facing such an embarrassment in the policy formulation. In 1991, during the first Gulf War, Chandrasekhar was the PM. As PM, he had given permission to the US Air Force USAF planes to refuel in Mumbai airport. However, when this fact became public, members of the parliament were against it, as the elections were likely anytime then. The Congress party, which was supporting him from outside, was concerned with the effect on the Muslim voters. Then, after discussion in the parliament, the policy of permitting refueling the USAF planes was changed. Second, Parliament has control over the money that is spent to run the foreign policy and national security establishments in the country. But parliamentary control over the funds appropriated is pre-functionary. The budget and the appropriations for individual ministries like external affairs and defense are often rushed through in the parliament. Veteran parliamentarian Madhu Dandavate once wrote that 85 to 87% of budget proposals are approved without any debate. This is really an appealing situation cutting across the very democratic theory that control over the money lends the parliament to control the executive branch. The MPs are not greatly concerned about the financial needs of the nation's armed forces. During 1959-1960, there was an obvious national security threat from Communist China. But then Defense Minister Krishna Menon proposed a reduction of rupees 25 crores from the defense budget. The MPs never protested. On the other hand, the defense budget in 1987-1988 was rupees 12,512 crores, till then highest ever. But the MPs, while discussing it, were very feeble in questioning the sudden rise in the defense budget. When an MP did question Rajiv Gandhi, then PM, silenced the member by stating that anyone questioning defense budget is anti-national. The third area of parliamentary influence is through debate over the policy issues. All the parliamentary devices of generating a discussion in the parliament, like calling attention, notice, adjournment, questions, etc., are also available in foreign affairs to the members of the parliament. However, the discussion and debates in the parliament over the foreign policy issues is always pre-functionary. There are two main reasons for the lack of interest amongst the MPs beyond their general rural background and lower level of general education in international affairs. One reason is that in reality, Parliament is a large body. Lok Sabha consisting of over 500 and Rajya Sabha consisting of 250 people. Such a body cannot effectively make policy, let alone decide. If the large number is one reason for the parliament's inability to formulate nation's policy, the second reason is that they do not have basic political interest to pursue foreign affairs and defense matters in the parliament. The question is, by performing good role as an effective MP in the foreign affairs, he is not going to get a few additional votes in the next elections. On the other hand, if he is effective in getting an arms depot in his constituency or an ammunition manufacturing factory, he can generate employment for the people and get additional votes from his grateful voters. By and large, the MPs lack knowledge and information necessary to effectively discuss and suggest even alternate policy options to government. This is not an insurmountable problem. If given an expert advice, they can discuss foreign policy effectively. But the political will always seems to be lacking. Yet Parliament exercises broad influence by determining the general parameters of policy beyond which a government cannot proceed. Occasionally, their influence on the foreign policy directions of the country is much more than that. But for long, there was no strong link between the MEA or foreign policy formulation and Parliament, despite the fact that the foreign policy is a member of the Parliament. The only link has been through the Parliamentary Consultative Committee on External Affairs. Such a committee also exists relating to defense. Now we want to wind up this lecture. Thank you so much for your attention.